My wife left me for another man. Then he applied to work for me. I used to believe in forever the way you believe in gravity. Not because you can see it, but because everything keeps falling into place the same way every day. That was me with Lila, my wife since high school. My first real love, the person who knew my bad haircut phases and still held my hand in public. Back then, we were the couple teachers used as a warning and an example at the same time. A warning because we talked too much. An example because we never let go. We got married young. Not reckless young. More like stubborn young. Like we were signing our names on a promise we had already been keeping for years. Fast forward and adulthood showed up with receipts, rent, work emails, and that lovely thing called responsibility. I climbed at work the way some people climb mountains, slow at first and faster. Then suddenly you look down and realize you were way higher than you planned. My job turned into longer days and shorter weekends. I kept telling myself it was temporary. I kept telling Lila it was temporary too. She said she understood. She said she was proud. She said all the right supportive lines, and I believed her because I wanted to, because it is easier to believe the person you love than to question the small changes you do not have energy to investigate. The first sign was quiet, not dramatic. She stopped sending me those random midday texts, the dumb memes and grocery reminders. Then she started going out more. Nothing wild, just little dinners with friends. Yoga classes that somehow ended at 9 at night. I did not complain. I thought, good. She is living her life too. I'm not the only one allowed to be busy. Then one Tuesday, I came home early for the first time in months. I planned it like a surprise, a normal husband surprise. I even stopped to buy her favorite takeout. I walked in feeling proud of myself like I had just solved marriage. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. The takeout bag felt warm in my hand, while the hallway felt cold. Then I noticed the first thing that did not belong, a second coffee mug in the sink. Not ours, not the scratch that we bought when we were broke. This one was sleek, black, expensive looking, like it had opinions. I stood there staring at it like it might explain itself. I actually laughed, a short, dumb laugh, because what kind of detective story starts with a coffee mug? That night she came home later than usual. She kissed my cheek like she was following instructions. Her smile was the kind you give a coworker in the elevator, polite, practiced, empty. I asked about her day. She answered like she was reading bullet points. I told her I came home early. She said that was nice. Nice, not happy, not I miss you, just nice. Then my phone buzzed, a message from my boss about a project that could change everything, and I did what I always did. I checked it, I replied. I went back into work mode for 30 seconds. When I looked up, Lila was watching me. Like I had just proven her point in court. Later in bed, she turned away, and I stared at the ceiling feeling like the room had shifted slightly off-center, like the world was still the same, but my place in it was not. The next morning, she left early, and I stayed behind to take a call. When I opened the closet to grab a shirt, I noticed a gap, a missing jacket, then another gap, a missing pair of shoes, nothing that screamed disaster, just enough to whisper it. If I had been smart, I would have asked right then. If I had been brave, I would have demanded answers. Instead, I did what I was best at. I worked. 2 weeks later, I would learn the real reason for those missing things. And it would not come from Lila. It would come from a name I had never heard before, popping up on my screen like a notification from the universe. And the worst part was that when I saw, my first thought was not anger. My first thought was, of course, because I had been gone without leaving and someone else had been present without arriving. But that is the version of a story that sounds neat and moral, the version where I am the hardworking husband and she is the bored wife with excuses. The truth was messier, and it was already moving boxes while I was still answering emails. 2 weeks after the coffee mug mystery in my life did that strange thing where it looks normal from the outside, but inside everything is rearranging itself without asking permission. The name that appeared on my screen was Mark. No last name, just Mark. Attached to a message that said, I think you deserve to know the truth, which is a sentence no one enjoys receiving on a Wednesday afternoon, especially not while sitting in a glass office surrounded by people who think you have it all figured out. I stared at the message longer than necessary. My first instinct was to ignore it, not because I was brave, but because I was tired. Tired people make deals with denial all the time, but then another message came through. I am the man your wife is living with now. And just like that, denial packed its bags and left. I remember standing up too fast, my chair rolling back like it wanted distance from the situation. My heart was loud, but my face stayed calm. Years of meetings had trained me well. I typed back something mature and controlled like, what are you talking about? Which is hilarious because I knew exactly what he was talking about. He replied almost immediately. She told me you two were basically over. She said you chose work over her. She said she tried everything. That sentence stuck. She tried everything because from where I was standing, everything looked suspiciously easy. Easy for her to slowly remove herself while I stayed put. Easy to rewrite the story where I was the absent villain. Mark kept typing like he had been waiting for this moment. He said they had been together for months. He said she moved in last week. He said she cried the first night, but felt relieved. Relieved, another word that did not belong to me anymore. I did not yell. I did not cry. I did not storm out of the office. I finished my workday like a professional statue. Then I drove home in silence. The apartment greeted me with that same held breath feeling. Only now it made sense. The gaps in the closet were no longer whispers, but confirmations. When Lila came home that night, she did not look surprised to see me waiting. She looked prepared, like someone who had rehearsed a speech in the car. She said, "We need to talk," which is never a sentence that improves your evening. She told me everything, but framed it carefully. She said she felt lonely. She said I was always working. She said she needed to feel seen. She said Mark listened. She said just happened. I noticed how often she said she instead of we. When I asked why she did not talk to me, she said she tried. When I asked when she decided to leave, she said she did not plan it. When I asked why she moved out without telling me, she said she was afraid I would convince her to stay. And that was the moment something in me clicked in a place, not anger, not heartbreak, clarity, because love does not require secrecy, and commitment does not run away quietly. I told her I knew she was already living with him. Her eyes widened just enough to confirm it. She cried then, real tears, messy ones, but I felt strangely calm, like I'd already mourned something before it officially died. She packed the rest of her things that night. No drama, no screaming, just boxes and awkward pauses. When the door closed behind her, the apartment exhaled for the first time in months. I slept on the couch and woke up early, made coffee for one, and went to work because that was the only part of my life that still made sense. Over the next few weeks, the story spread quietly among friends. Everyone had an opinion. Some said I worked too much. Some said she was selfish. I said nothing, because explaining yourself to spectators does not change the outcome. The divorce was efficient and cold, like paperwork for a business that no longer existed. When it was done, she sent one last message saying she hoped we could be friends someday. I did not reply, not out of cruelty, but because some chapters do not need epilogues. What she did not know was that while she was building a new life on borrowed justifications, mine was about to change in ways none of us saw coming. And the first sign came not from her or Mark, but from my boss closing my office door with a smile that usually meant trouble or opportunity. And this time it was opportunity wearing trouble as a disguise. The meeting with my boss lasted 20 minutes and changed the direction of my life more than my marriage ending ever did. He talked about leadership, trust, and timing. Then he offered me a role that sounded flattering and terrifying at the same time. A major project overseas, high visibility, high pressure, the kind of assignment people either fail loudly or succeed. So while their name stops being optional in conversations, I said yes before my fear had time to form complete sentences. 2 weeks later, I was packing my life into suitcases while my old apartment echoed like a place that had already forgotten me. The irony was not lost on me. The year my wife left because I worked too much was the year I chose to work even more. But this time was different. This time was not escaping. I was rebuilding. The new city did not care about my past. No one knew my story. No one lowered their voice when asking how I was doing. I was just another professional with ambition and a bad habit of skipping meals. The work was relentless, 12-hour days, problem after problem, but every solved issue felt like proof that I was still capable of building something that lasted. At night, I walked the unfamiliar streets listening to podcasts and my own thoughts. Sometimes Lila appeared in my head uninvited. Usually in the quiet moments, I did not fight it. I let the memory pass like a commercial you do not skip, but also do not engage with. Slowly, her presence faded, replaced by routines, gym sessions, early mornings, late dinners. I learned to enjoy my own company without turning it into a personality trait. Months went by, then a full year. Promotions happened quietly. Raises came with nods instead of applause. My name started appearing in emails from people I had never met, then on panels. Then in industry articles, success crept up on me the way confidence does, subtle at first, then undeniable. Somewhere during that year, Mark tried to reach out again. He sent a message saying things were complicated. I deleted it without opening, because complication was no longer a language I spoke. Friends back home sent updates I did not ask for. Apparently Lila and Mark argued often. Apparently she missed the stability. Apparently she talked about me more than she should have. I listened politely and changed the subject. Not because I was indifferent, but because I had learned that curiosity about old wounds only reopens them. When I finally returned home after nearly 2 years, the city felt familiar, but smaller, like I had outgrown it quietly. My company hosted a small event to mark the completion of the project. Nothing flashy, just professionals and polite applause. I stood there holding a glass of something expensive, listening to my boss praise my work. And that was when I noticed her across the room. Lila looked different. Not bad, just unsure, like someone attending a reunion without knowing their role anymore. Our eyes met for a second, then another. She smiled, tentative, hopeful. I nodded once. Neutral, respectful, distant. I did not walk over, I did not avoid her either. I simply stayed where I was, because for the first time in a long while I did not feel pulled in any direction. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It said, "Congratulations, I heard about the project. Proud of you." I knew exactly who it was from. I set the phone down and finished my drink because the past had a habit of knocking when it sensed growth, and I was not yet ready to open the door. The message stayed unanswered for 3 days. Not as a strategy, not as a punishment, simply because my life no longer revolved around immediate emotional responses. During those days, I unpacked properly for the first time in years, bought real groceries instead of survival food, and reconnected with a version of myself that did not measure worth by who stayed. On the 4th day, another message came through. This one longer, careful, the kind of text written and rewritten before being sent. Lila said seeing me at the event brought back memories. She said she had made mistakes. She said she hoped we could talk. Closure, that word always shows up, dressed as maturity, but usually wants something else underneath. I agreed to meet her for coffee, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I believe in facing things directly. We met at a quiet place halfway between our old life and my new one. She arrived early, something she used to tease me for never doing. She smiled too quickly when she saw me, then relaxed when she realized I was calm. Not cold, just calm. She talked first. She always did when nervous. She said life had been harder than she expected. She said Mark was not who she thought he was. She said passion does not pay bills or fix loneliness. She said she missed our stability, our history. She missed me. I listened without interrupting, stirring my coffee like it required my full attention. When she finally paused, she looked at me like she was waiting for a door to open. I told her I was sorry things turned out that way, and meant it. But sympathy is not an invitation. Her face shifted when she realized my tone was not nostalgic. It was factual. She asked if I was seeing anyone. I said no, not because I owed her the truth, but because it was the truth. She smiled like I was good news, like it was space she could fill. Then she asked the question she had been circling. Do you think we could try again, just slowly as friends at first? I took a breath, not to soften the answer, but to make it clear, I told her no. Not because I hated her, but because I respected myself. I reminded her that she did not leave to find herself. She left because someone else was already there, and I would not be the backup plan to a life that did not work out. She cried again, but this time there was frustration in it. She said I had changed. I smiled and said I hoped so. She accused me of choosing work over her again, and that was when I realized the script had not changed. Only the actors had. I stood up, paid for both coffees, and wished her well. When I walked out, I felt lighter, not victorious, just finished. That night, she sent multiple messages, apologies, memories, promises that did not respond. Over the next week, she tried different angles, casual check-ins, shared jokes, reminders of inside stories, each message more desperate than the last. And each time I chose silence, not as revenge, but as boundaries. What she did not realize was that silence is only loud to people who are afraid of being alone. And I was no longer one of them. Then, one afternoon, my assistant mentioned a name. Casually, Mark had applied for a position in our company in my department, and suddenly the past was not knocking anymore. It was standing in the lobby holding a resume. I did not react when I heard his name, not because I felt nothing, but because years of responsibility had taught me the value of a neutral face. Inside, there was curiosity mixed with something quieter, closure perhaps. I asked for the resume, read it carefully, and realized the universe had a sense of timing that bordered on comedy. Mark was qualified enough to deserve an interview and humble enough to need one. I did not schedule it myself. That would have been unprofessional. Instead, I asked my team to include him in the standard process. Fairness is a powerful shield. The day of the interview, I arrived early, not to prepare, but to center myself. When Mark walked in, he recognized me immediately. His posture stiffened for half a second before he recovered. I introduced myself like we were strangers, shook his hand, and watched relief and confusion battle across his face. The interview was calm, technical, focused. I asked about his experience, his problem-solving style, his ability to work under pressure. Not once did I mention Lila. Not once did I hint at history. And that unsettled him more than confrontation ever could have. Halfway through, he tried to humanize the moment. Mentioned personal growth, lessons learned, fresh starts. I nodded politely and redirected back to the role. When it ended, I thanked him and wished him luck. After he left the room, my team asked what I thought. I told him the truth. He was competent, but not exceptional, solid, but not essential. And in leadership, that distinction matters. We chose another candidate. The decision was documented, clean, justified, unremarkable. Later that evening, Lila called, not texted, called. I let it ring. Then she left a voicemail. Her voice was tight. She asked if I had something to do with Mark not getting the job. The accusation was almost impressive. I did not respond because defending yourself against imagined offenses only feeds them. A week later, I ran into Mark unexpectedly at a conference. He approached me, hesitant, and said he understood why things happened the way they did. He apologized, not dramatically, just honestly. I accepted it, not for him, but for myself. Then I walked away because apologies are acknowledgments, not obligations. Lila, however, did not stop. She showed up at my building one evening unannounced. Said she just wanted to talk. Said she missed how safe life felt with me. I told her safety is built together, not reclaimed after being abandoned. She accused me of being cold. I told her I was consistent. She said people make mistakes. I agreed, and added that consequences are not cruelty. She left angry, and that was the last time she tried showing up in person. From the outside, my life looked impressive now. New role, respect, financial stability, but the real change was internal. I no longer needed validation from someone who left when things got hard. And just when I thought the chapter was fully closed, I received an invitation that threatened to reopen it, a wedding invitation with both of their names on it. The envelope arrived on a quiet Monday morning, mixed in with utility bills and conference flyers. Thick paper, expensive font, my name written carefully like effort could rewrite history. I knew what it was before opening it. Intuition gets sharper when you stop ignoring it. Inside was the invitation. Mark and Lila requesting the pleasure of my presence at their wedding. No apology note, no explanation, just a date, a location, and a confidence that bordered on audacity. I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was unbelievable. 2 years ago, she left claiming loneliness, and now she was inviting me to celebrate the life she chose instead. I set the invitation on the counter and let it sit there like an unanswered question. All day it stayed in my mind, during meetings, during calls, during moments that used to belong to stress, but now belong to control. Part of me wondered if this was closure wrapped in paper or provocation disguised as politeness. By evening, my phone buzzed again. A message from Lila. She said she hoped the invitation did not feel strange. She said she wanted to show there were no hard feelings. She said she wanted to prove she had moved on. That line was almost impressive in its lack of self-awareness. People who have truly moved on do not need witnesses. I did not reply. Instead, I made dinner, turned on music, and reminded myself how far I had come. The next day at work, a colleague casually mentioned the wedding industry article featuring Mark and Lila as a modern success story. Apparently, she had shared my name publicly once, calling me the chapter that taught her growth. Growth is an interesting word when used as decoration. I realized then this was not about me attending. It was about her being seen as someone who had everything work out in the end, including my approval. Declining quietly would not satisfy that narrative. Attending would feed it. So I did something unexpected even to myself. I sent a gift, simple, tasteful, impersonal, no note, just a name on a card that said, "Wishing you well." Nothing more, nothing less. Within hours, my phone lit up. Missed calls, messages, confusion, gratitude, questions. I ignored all of it because boundaries do not require explanations. The wedding day came and went without me. I spent it hiking early in the morning, watching the sun rise over something solid and real. Later that evening, I saw photos online. Smiles, stage perfection captured in frames designed to convince. She looked happy in a way that needed confirmation. He looked proud in a way that needed validation. I felt nothing sharp, just a distant recognition that some stories end exactly how they begin, focused on appearances. A week later, she reached out again. Said marriage was not as easy as she expected. Said she felt nervous. Said she hoped we could talk as friends now, that everything was settled. I read the message once, then deleted it, because the door she thought was closed had never been hers to reopen. And while she was trying to revisit the past, I was already being pulled into a future that had nothing to do with her. My boss called me in his office that Friday and offered me something bigger than a promotion, a partnership, equity, influence, legacy. And as I shook his hand, I realized something quietly powerful. The life she left was the life that prepared me for everything she could never keep up with. The partnership changed my schedule, but not my balance. Meetings became sharper, conversations, shorter, decisions heavier. People listened when I spoke, not because of my title, but because my words carried weight now. Success has a sound to it, and it is usually silence in a room full of decision makers. News traveled fast. It always does when money and influence shift hands. Within a week, my name appeared in places I never searched for. Articles, panels, interviews, polite questions about leadership and resilience. And that was when Lila reached out again, not directly this time, but through a mutual friend who asked if I would be open to a quick conversation for closure. Closure again, like a key word that unlocks forgiveness on demand. I declined kindly and firmly. The friend relayed the message and added that Lila had not taken it well. Apparently, she said I was punishing her by moving on without her. That sentence stayed with me longer than I expected. Not because it hurt, but because it revealed everything. She still believed my life existed in relation to hers, like my growth was a reaction instead of choice. A few days later, I ran into her unexpectedly at a bookstore downtown. No dramatic music, no slow motion, just coincidence doing what it does best. She froze when she saw me, then smiled too late. We exchanged small talk like strangers who shared a class once. She mentioned the wedding again, said it was beautiful, said she hoped I saw the photos. I said I did not. And meant it. She hesitated, then asked how I was really doing. I told her I was content, not happy, not sad, just steady. She looked confused by that, like contentment was a foreign language. Then she said something honest by accident. She said she thought I would still be angry. That hurt more than anything else she had ever said. Not because it was cruel, but because it showed how little she understood me. Anger keeps ties alive. Indifference sets them free. When we said goodbye, she stood there a second longer than necessary, like she expected me to turn back. I did not. Later that evening, she sent one final message. No nostalgia, no excuses, just a simple sentence. I see now that you were not waiting for me. I read it twice, then replied with one line of my own. I was never waiting, I was building. She did not respond after that. Weeks passed quietly, peacefully, my life filled with projects, travel dinners, with people who challenged me, conversations that went somewhere new. One night, while organizing old files, I found a photo from high school me and Lila smiling. With no idea what was ahead, I did not feel lost when I looked at it. I felt gratitude. Some people are. Lessons, not destinations. I deleted the photo and shut the laptop because the past had finally stopped asking for my attention, and just when I thought the story had reached its natural end, an unexpected invitation arrived again, not from her, not from him, but from someone who had watched everything unfold from a distance and decided it was time to speak. The message came from an unfamiliar email address, but the name at the bottom made me pause. It was Lila's mother, a woman who had known me since. I was 16 who once told me I would make a good husband because I listened more than I talked. She asked if we could meet, said there was something she needed to say face to face. Curiosity won over hesitation. We met for lunch at a quiet restaurant far from old neighborhoods and shared memories. She looked older than I remembered, not fragile, just reflective. After a few polite exchanges, she got to the point. She said she wanted to apologize, not on behalf of Lila, but on behalf of herself for not speaking up sooner. She admitted she had known about the affair months before I did. She said Lila came to her asking for validation, not guidance. Asking to be told she deserved more. Because I worked too much, she said she disagreed but stayed quiet, hoping it would resolve itself. It never does. She told me Mark was not a coincidence. He was a choice made long before the story was rewritten to blame my absence. Hearing this did not reopen wounds, it closed them. Because uncertainty is heavier than truth. She said Lila now regretted the way she left, not because of love, but because of comparison. My growth had forced her to confront her own decisions. She said she saw now that I was never the problem. I thanked her sincerely, not for taking my side, but for respecting me enough to tell the truth. When we stood to leave, she said something I will always remember. She said some people mistake comfort for love and panic when comfort requires effort. That line followed me home. Later that night, I received another message from Lila. Unaware of the lunch, she said she felt stuck, said she did everything she thought would make her happy and still felt restless. She asked how I found peace so easily. I did not respond immediately, for the first time in a long while I considered it. Not because she deserved advice, but because I did. I replied simply, peace comes from keeping promises to yourself, not escaping discomfort. She replied with a thank you, and nothing else. Days turned into weeks, and the silence remained intact. Not heavy, not tense, just natural. I moved forward with the partnership plans, relocated part-time, started mentoring younger professionals who reminded me of who I used to be. One evening, after a long day, I stood on my balcony, overlooking a city that felt earned, and realized something quietly profound. The betrayal did not break me. It clarified me. It stripped away illusions and left behind direction. I no longer measure time by what I lost, but by what I built. And the final piece of that realization came when I understood that my story did not end with her leaving, or even with her wanting to return. It ended when I stopped needing either outcome to feel complete. 2 years after everything fell apart, I stood in a room full of people listening to my name, followed by words like vision, integrity, and leadership, the kind of words that once sounded abstract but now felt earned. The company celebrated a milestone, and I was asked to say a few things. I talked about responsibility, about showing up even when no one is watching, about choosing long-term values over short-term comfort. I did not mention betrayal or heartbreak, because growth does not need a villain to be valid. Applause filled the room, but what stayed with me was the quiet afterward, the calm certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. Later that night, as messages of congratulations came and one stood out, it was from Lila, short, respectful, final. She said she was happy for me and wished me well. No questions, no invitations, no longing hidden between lines. I replied with a simple thank you and meant it. There was no weight in it, no nostalgia, no edge, just closure in its truest form. Not a conversation, not a confrontation, but mutual acceptance of separate paths. Weeks later, I ran into her one last time by chance at an airport. We exchanged smiles, talked about weather, schedules, ordinary things. When we said goodbye, it felt complete. Not sad, not unfinished, just done. On the flight, I looked out the window and thought about how easily life could have gone another way if I had chased explanations or begged for loyalty from someone already halfway out the door. Instead, I had stayed steady, worked forward, and trusted time to do what it does best: reveal character. I learned that being left does not mean being less. That success is not revenge, but alignment. And that dignity is often the quiet decision to keep walking without turning back. My life did not improve because she regretted leaving. It improved because I stopped needing her to. And that was the real victory. Not the career, not the recognition, but the freedom to build a future that did not depend on someone else choosing me. The story people like to tell is that she came back and begged, and I rejected her dramatically. The truth is simpler and stronger. I outgrew the place where her approval mattered. And in doing so, I found something better than closure. I found peace.